Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. This video is created strictly for educational and entertainment purposes. The world of social media marketing and content creation is highly volatile and subject to rapid algorithmic changes. This content does not constitute professional marketing, legal, or financial advice. Any results mentioned are based on historical trends and specific case studies, not a reflection of what every individual may experience. Your success depends on your own effort, niche, and market conditions. Please conduct your own due diligence before investing time or capital into any social media strategy. The era of the accidental viral hit is officially over. If you are still posting content and crossing your fingers, hoping the algorithm picks you up, you are essentially playing a high-stakes game of digital roulette where the house always wins. In the last 12 months, the average human attention span has dropped to roughly 8 seconds, which is less than that of a goldfish. Yet, while millions of creators are complaining about declining reach and shadow banning, a small group of elite strategists is consistently pulling in 10 million, 50 million, and even 100 million views on single uploads. They are not luckier than you. They are simply operating on a completely different psychological blueprint. Most people think virality is a lightning strike. It is actually a mechanical process. If you do not understand the neurochemical triggers that cause a user in the United States to stop scrolling, you are invisible. We are currently living through the most competitive attention economy in human history, where a single piece of content can generate more brand awareness than a Super Bowl commercial, but only if you know how to bypass the brain's natural filter for boring information. If you fail to master the first 3 seconds of your video, you have already lost the next 10 minutes of your viewer's life. This is not a basic tutorial on how to use a ring light or what hashtags to use in your caption. This is the first part of a comprehensive 10-part masterclass designed to deconstruct the exact architecture of high-performance social media content specifically for the US market. By the end of this deep dive, you will understand the underlying data structures that govern platforms like YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Instagram Reels. We are going to solve the problem of stagnant growth by shifting your perspective from that of a creator to that of a behavioral psychologist. You will learn why certain visual patterns trigger immediate dopamine releases, and how to structure a narrative loop that makes it physically difficult for a viewer to swipe away. We are moving beyond surface-level tips and into the raw mechanics of audience retention and viral velocity. To understand why videos go viral in the United States, we must first look at the sheer volume of data being processed. In the US market alone, users consume hours of short-form content daily. This has created a highly sophisticated viewer who can detect a sales pitch or a low-value video within milliseconds. Historical trends show that the most successful videos are those that leverage the expectation violation theory. This is when a video starts with a visual or auditory cue that contradicts what the brain expects to see next. For example, a case study of a major tech reviewer showed that by simply changing the first frame from a shot of the product to a shot of the product being disassembled with a mallet, the click-through rate increased by over 40%. The American audience prizes authenticity and high-stakes transitions. If your video looks like a commercial, it will be treated like a commercial and skipped. Let us break down the concept of the internal narrative. Every viral video tells a story, even if that video is only 15 seconds long. The mistake most creators make is starting the story at the beginning. In a high-velocity market like the US, you must start the story at the climax. This is known as in media res, or starting in the middle of the action. If you are filming a video about a home renovation, do not start with a shot of the empty room. Start with the moment the sledgehammer hits the wall or the moment the finished flooring is revealed for a split second before cutting back to the start. This creates an information gap. The human brain hates unresolved loops. When you show a glimpse of the ending at the very beginning, you create a psychological itch that the viewer can only scratch by watching the rest of the video to see how you reach that conclusion. Data from top-tier analytics firms suggests that retention is no longer just about keeping people watching. It is about re-engagement points. In a 10-minute deep dive or even a 60-second short, you need a psychological reset every 6 to 10 seconds. This can be a camera angle change, a text overlay, a sound effect, or a shift in the tone of your voice. In the US market, visual density is key. If the frame remains static for more than 4 seconds, the brain begins to disengage. This is why you see top creators using B-roll, overlays, or zoom-ins to emphasize specific words. It is not just for aesthetics. It is a tactical maneuver to force the viewer's eyes to refocus on the screen, preventing the zombie scroll effect. Furthermore, we must address the cultural currency of the US market. Trends in the United States move faster than anywhere else in the world. What was relevant on a Tuesday is often obsolete by the following Monday. To capture this, creators must move away from trend hopping and toward trend predicting. This involves monitoring the leading indicators of content, such as rising search terms on Google Trends or the adoption of specific audio tracks in niche communities before they hit the mainstream. Case studies of viral food creators show that the ones who achieve longevity are those who take a trending concept, like a specific cooking hack, and add a layer of contrarian analysis. Instead of just doing the hack, they explain why the hack is actually a waste of time, or they improve it by 10%. This positions the creator as an authority rather than a follower, which is a critical distinction for building a loyal, long-term audience in a saturated market. Another pillar of this masterclass is the value-to-time ratio. The American viewer is transactional. They are giving you their time, which they value highly, and they expect a return on that investment in the form of entertainment, information, or emotional resonance. If your intro is 20 seconds of you talking about your day, you are overdrawing from your attention bank before you have made a deposit. A viral structure requires an immediate deposit of value. You must answer the viewer's subconscious question, "What is in it for me?" within the first 5 seconds. This is why step-by-step breakdowns perform so well. They promise a clear, tangible outcome. Whether you are teaching a complex software skill or showing a DIY craft, the roadmap must be visible from the start. Finally, we have to look at the algorithmic signal versus the human signal. While we often talk about the algorithm as if it is a sentient being, it is simply a mirror of human behavior. If 1,000 people in a row watch your video to the end and then share it with one friend, the algorithm has no choice but to show it to 10,000 more. The shareability of a video in the US is often driven by identity signaling. People share videos that reflect how they want to be perceived by their peers. If you create a video that makes the viewer feel smart, funny, or in the know, they will share it to bolster their own social standing. This is a deep-seated human drive that transcends platforms. As we move through this 10-part series, we will examine how to bake shareability into the very script of your video, ensuring that your content doesn't just get watched, but gets distributed by the very people who consume it. We are going to look at the exact lighting setups that signal professionalism, the microphone techniques that build intimacy, and the editing rhythms that mirror the fast-paced nature of modern life. This is the foundation of the viral blueprint. To understand how these editing rhythms translate into actual views, we have to look at the concept of the micro-moment. In 2026, the US viewer is no longer just watching a video. They are participating in a sensory experience. If you look at the historical trends of top-tier creators like Jackson Miller, a breakout star in the tech lifestyle niche this year, his videos do not just rely on high-quality 8K visuals. They rely on the tactical use of Foley sound effects. Every time a new piece of text pops up on the screen, there is a subtle high-frequency whoosh or pop. Every time he makes a point, there is a slight punch-in on his face. This is not just for flair. This is a physiological anchor. By providing a synchronized auditory and visual stimulus, you are essentially resetting the viewer's focus clock. Imagine if you were sitting in a quiet room and someone dropped a glass. Your eyes would immediately dart toward the sound. That is the biological imperative of the orienting response. Professional editors for the US market use this response every 5 to 7 seconds to ensure the brain never enters a passive state. Let us dive deeper into the specific structure of the high-retention narrative. In the US market, we use a framework called the tension release escalation cycle. Most amateur creators build tension and then release it, ending the video there. The viral masters build tension, provide a small release, and then immediately pivot to an even higher stakes question. Take the case study of a viral 2026 automotive restoration channel. The video starts with a totaled rare electric vehicle. The tension is, can it be fixed? At the 3-minute mark, they get the engine to hum. That is the release. But before the viewer can feel satisfied and click away, the narrator reveals a hidden structural crack that could make the car explode at high speeds. That is the escalation. By constantly moving the finish line, you create what we call a narrative infinite loop. The viewer feels compelled to stay because the cost of leaving, not knowing the resolution to the new, higher stakes problem, is psychologically higher than the cost of staying for another 3 minutes. Data suggests that the first 60 seconds of your video dictate approximately 80% of your total reach. If your retention graph shows a sharp cliff in the first 10 seconds, the platform's recommendation engine interprets this as a lack of relevance and stops pushing the content to new seed audiences. To combat this, we utilize the pattern interrupt. Imagine Sarah, a typical viewer in Chicago, scrolling through her feed during a lunch break. She has seen 1,000 day in the life vlogs. If your video starts with you waking up and brushing your teeth, she will swipe in 0.5 seconds. However, if your video starts with you standing in the middle of a crowded Times Square holding a sign that says, "I spent $0 in New York for 24 hours, the pattern is broken. It is an anomaly. In the US market, anomalies generate clicks. Historical trends indicate that videos featuring a contradictory visual, something that shouldn't be where it is, have a 30% higher click-through rate than standard topical thumbnails. Now, consider the voice of authority versus the voice of the peer. In the United States, there has been a massive cultural shift in 2026 toward the peer expert. Viewers are increasingly skeptical of overly polished, corporate-style presentations. They want to feel like they are getting a secret from a friend who happens to be a genius. This is why the lo-fi aesthetic, when combined with high-value information, is currently dominating the charts. Signals authenticity. You can see this in case studies of financial education channels that shifted from sterile office backdrops to living room setups. Despite the casual setting, the audio quality remains broadcast level. This is the secret professionalism layer. You want your video to look accessible but sound undeniable. If your audio has an echo or background hiss, the American audience perceives it as low authority and will discount your information, regardless of how accurate it is. The step-by-step detail of a viral edit also involves the information density principle. If you are explaining a concept, you should not just speak it. You must visualize it simultaneously using on-screen evidence. If you mention a statistic about the 2026 job market, that statistic should appear as a clean, minimalist graphic at the exact moment the syllable leaves your lips. This reinforces the dual coding theory of cognition, where the brain processes visual and verbal information through different channels. By hitting both channels at once, you increase the stickiness of the content. A study of educational content in the US showed that viewers could recall 65% of the information when presented with dual coding, compared to only 10% when just hearing it. Another critical element is the micro-story. Within your larger 10-minute masterclass, you should have at least 3 self-contained mini-stories. These serve as retention spikes. For example, if you are teaching social media growth, you might pause to tell a 60-second story about a creator who lost everything by ignoring a specific policy update and how they recovered. This provides an emotional break from the heavy data and gives the viewer a human anchor. In the US, the underdog story and the comeback story are the 2 most powerful narrative archetypes. When you weave these into a technical tutorial, you are tapping into deep-seated cultural myths that resonate on a subconscious level. We also have to discuss the comment section strategy. In the US, the comment section is the second screen of the video. Viral videos are often designed to spark a debate, not a toxic one but a subjective preference debate. For instance, if you are ranking the best cameras for 2026, and you deliberately place a fan favorite at number 4 instead of number 1, you are inviting the audience to correct you. Every comment they write is a high-value signal to the algorithm that the content is engaging. This is not about being wrong, it is about being pragmatically polarizing. You are taking a stand, and in the US market, a neutral stance is often a one-way ticket to obscurity. As we look toward the technical execution of these ideas, we have to prepare for the visual hook of the next phase. While the script is the skeleton, the color grade and spatial audio are the skin and muscle. Most creators think they can just use a filter and be done. But in a market where every teenager has a cinematic mode on their phone, professional virality requires a signature visual identity. If someone sees one frame of your video without your face in it, would they still know it is yours? If the answer is no, you haven't built a brand, you've just made a video. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to deconstruct the visual grammar of 2026. We will look at why negative space in your framing can actually increase viewer trust, and the specific lighting frequency that has been shown to keep viewers alert during long-form content. We are moving from the psychology of the script into the physical science of the screen, and if you miss the specific color contrast ratios we are about to discuss, your videos will continue to look amateur to the subconscious mind of the American consumer no matter how good your hook is. The subconscious mind of the American viewer in 2026 has been trained by high-budget streaming services and top-tier mobile gaming to recognize professional-grade color science within a fraction of a second. If your video looks washed out or overly saturated in a way that feels artificial, You are triggering a survival mechanism that interprets low-quality visuals as a lack of credibility. We have to discuss the concept of the teal and orange color grade, which has evolved into a more sophisticated version this year known as the warm neutral contrast. Historical trends show that skin tones must remain in a very specific range on the vector scope to maintain human connection. When skin tones lean too far toward magenta or green, the viewer experiences a subtle version of the uncanny valley effect. They might not be able to articulate why they are leaving your video, but they feel a sense of discomfort that leads to a swipe. Consider the case study of Marcus Reed, a tech educator who saw a 22% increase in average view duration simply by recalibrating his studio lighting to a 5600K daylight balance, while using a secondary hair light with a 3200K tungsten warmth. This creates a three-dimensional depth that separates the subject from the background. In the US market, depth equals quality. If you are filming against a flat white wall with no shadows, you are essentially telling the viewer that you did not put thought into the presentation. Imagine if you were watching a movie where everything was lit by a single overhead fluorescent bulb. You would immediately perceive it as a low-budget production. The same applies to social media. By creating a high-contrast environment where the subject pops out from the background, you are forcing the viewer's ocular muscles to focus exactly where you want them. This reduces cognitive load. When it is easy for the brain to process what it is seeing, it is more likely to stay engaged for the long haul. Let us look at the step-by-step detail of the visual hierarchy. This is the art of directing the viewer's eye using color and light. In 2026, the most viral videos utilize a technique called selective saturation. You keep the overall image somewhat muted but make the most important element, perhaps a product you are demonstrating or a key piece of evidence, 10% more saturated than everything else in the frame. This acts as a silent spotlight. Data from eye tracking studies conducted by major US marketing firms indicates that viewers spend 60% more time looking at the saturated object in a desaturated frame. This is a powerful tool for retention because it keeps the viewer from scanning the edges of the screen for distractions. You are effectively putting them in a visual tunnel that leads directly to your message. Now we must address the psychological impact of negative space. In the United States, there is a cultural obsession with clarity and breathing room. If your frame is cluttered with boxes, laundry, or unnecessary decorations, it creates visual noise. Imagine if Sarah from our previous example is watching your video while on a noisy subway. Her environment is already chaotic. If your video is also chaotic, she will feel overwhelmed and exit. However, if your frame is clean, with plenty of negative space around your head, you provide her with a visual sanctuary. Historical trends in 2026 show that the minimalist aesthetic is no longer just a design choice. It is a retention strategy. By removing distractions, you are telling the audience that every single thing remaining in the frame is there for a reason. This builds a sense of intentionality that is highly respected by US audiences. Beyond the static frame, we have to analyze the motion of the camera itself. In 2026, static shots are increasingly rare in viral content. Even if you are sitting at a desk, you should be utilizing digital zooms and pans. This is often referred to as the Ken Burns effect on steroids. If you are making a point that is particularly serious, a slow 5% digital zoom in over 3 seconds creates an intense feeling of intimacy. Conversely, a quick zoom out can signal a transition to a more lighthearted or broad topic. This is about matching the visual energy to the vocal energy. If your voice is getting louder and more excited but the camera is standing perfectly still, there is a sensory mismatch. The brain notices this inconsistency and begins to disengage. A successful case study involving a 2026 travel vlogger demonstrated that by simply adding a subtle camera shake in post-production to mimic a handheld feel, the audience felt more immersed in the journey, leading to a higher rate of shares. We also need to discuss the science of subtitles in 2026. Subtitles are no longer an accessibility feature. They are a core narrative tool. Over 70% of short-form videos in the US are consumed without sound in public spaces. This means your text needs to be more than just a transcription. It needs to be an animation. The trend this year is the dynamic highlight, where every word changes color as it is spoken. This creates a rhythm that the viewer can follow visually even if they cannot hear you. But there is a trap here. If the text covers your face or the main action, you are creating visual conflict. The optimal placement for text in the US market is the lower middle third, specifically avoiding the areas where platform UI elements like the like button or the description will overlap. Imagine if you spent 3 hours editing a video only to have the most important piece of information covered by the TikTok logo or the YouTube Shorts interface. This happens to thousands of creators every day. The step-by-step fix is to use a UI overlay template during your editing process. This ensures that your visual hierarchy is maintained across all devices. Furthermore, the font choice matters. Sans serif fonts like Montserrat or Roboto are the standard in 2026 because they are highly legible at small sizes on mobile screens. Using a decorative or script font for your main captions is a common mistake that leads to a drop in retention because it takes the brain too long to decode the letters. In a world where you only have seconds, you cannot afford to make your viewer work to understand you. Let us expand on the concept of the visual pattern interrupt again, but this time through the lens of color grading. Historical trends show that a sudden shift in the color palette can signal a shift in the story. If you are telling a story about a failure, you might shift the grade to a cooler blue-heavy tone. When you pivot to the solution, you shift back to a warm, vibrant grade. These are emotional cues that help the viewer navigate the narrative without you having to explicitly tell them how to feel. In the US, where emotional resonance is a major driver of virality, these subtle shifts can be the difference between a video that is watched once and a video that is remembered. The final layer of this visual deep dive is the use of overlay text as a psychological anchor. This is not the same as subtitles. These are the large, bold words that appear for only 1 or 2 seconds to emphasize a point. For example, if you say the word massive should appear on the screen in all caps, perhaps with a slight shadow to make it pop. This serves as a visual exclamation point. Data from 2026 engagement metrics shows that videos using bold overlaid text for key concepts have a 15% higher save rate. People save videos that look like they contain valuable, easy-to-reference information. As we prepare to transition into the next phase of this masterclass, we have to look at the one thing that is even more important than what the viewer sees. While the eyes are the gateway, the ears are the heart of the viral experience. Most people think that sound is just about being heard, but in 2026, sound is about being felt. If you have the perfect color grade and the perfect negative space, but your audio lacks the specific frequency profile that triggers trust, you are still fighting an uphill battle. In the next part, we are going to break down the psychoacoustics of the US market. We will explore why certain bass frequencies make you sound more authoritative, and how the use of binaural audio is changing the way viewers experience content on headphones. You will learn the exact decibel levels for background music that keep the energy high without drowning out your message. If you think your audio is good enough, you are likely leaving thousands of potential followers on the table. The reality of the 2026 digital landscape is that audio quality is the single most significant barrier to entry for the American viewer. Historical trends suggest that while a viewer might tolerate a slightly grainy image or an average color grade, they will abandon a video within 2 seconds if the audio is thin, distorted, or echoed. This brings us to the science of psychoacoustics and how it governs the US market's perception of authority. When we listen to a voice, our brains are subconsciously measuring the depth of the signal. In the United States, there is a deep-seated psychological association between low-frequency resonance and leadership. This is often referred to as the proximity effect. By positioning a high-quality cardioid microphone approximately 4 to 6 inches from your mouth, you naturally boost the lower frequencies of your voice, creating a warm, intimate sound that mimics a face-to-face conversation. Imagine a creator named David from Austin, Texas, who produces deep-dive career analysis videos. In early 2026, David noticed a plateau in his subscriber growth. After analyzing his session data, he realized that his mobile viewers, who make up 85% of his audience, were dropping off during his segments filmed outdoors. The wind noise and ambient city sounds were creating a high cognitive load for the listener. David switched to a dual-layer audio strategy. He used a localized lavalier microphone for his primary vocals, and then layered in a clean studio-recorded voiceover for the most critical data points. The potential outcomes were immediate. His average view duration climbed by nearly 3 minutes. This is because clean audio allows the listener to relax their brain. When the brain isn't struggling to filter out static, it can fully dedicate its processing power to the actual information you are presenting. To execute this at a masterclass level, you must understand the frequency profile of the human voice. In professional post-production for viral content, we use a 3-step equalization process. First, we apply a high-pass filter to cut out everything below 80 Hz. This removes the subaudible rumble of air conditioners and traffic that can muddy your mix. Second, we apply a slight boost in the 3 kHz to 5 kHz range. This is the presence range where the clarity of speech lives. In a crowded US market where viewers are often watching on low-quality smartphone speakers, this boost ensures that your consonants remain crisp. Third, we use a compressor to narrow the dynamic range. In 2026, the US audience consumes content in noisy environments, on buses, in gyms, or at busy coffee shops. If your whispers are too quiet and your exclamations are too loud, the viewer has to constantly adjust their volume. A well-compressed audio track remains at a consistent, intelligible level throughout, making it easy to consume anywhere. We must also discuss the tactical use of spatial audio and binaural soundscapes. With the widespread adoption of advanced wireless earbuds in 2026, many US viewers are listening in 3D space. If you are showing a product on the left side of the screen, a subtle sound effect panned 60% to the left creates a sense of immersion that is almost impossible to ignore. This is what we call the sonic hook. It isn't just about what you are saying, it is about where the sound is coming from. Case studies of high-end lifestyle creators show that using binaural recording for mundane tasks, like the sound of a pen on paper or the click of a mechanical keyboard, triggers ASMR-like responses in the viewer, which releases oxytocin and builds a chemical bond between the creator and the audience. This isn't just gimmickry. It is a way to occupy more of the viewer's sensory bandwidth, making it harder for them to be distracted by external stimuli. Now let us address the background music paradox. The biggest mistake made by amateur creators in the US market is using music that competes with the voice. In 2026, the most successful viral videos utilize music that is ducked specifically around the vocal frequencies. This is a technique called sidechaining. When you speak, the music volume automatically drops by 3 to 5 decibels, and when you pause, it swells back up. This creates a rhythmic pulse that keeps the energy high without sacrificing clarity. Furthermore, the genre of music must match the regional psychographics of your target US demographic. Historical trends indicate that lo-fi beats are highly effective for educational content because they provide a steady, non-distracting tempo that aids concentration. However, if your video is about a high-stakes investigation or a competitive challenge, a cinematic soundtrack with a tempo of 120 to 128 beats per minute is more effective at inducing a state of physiological arousal and urgency. Imagine if Sarah, our viewer from the previous parts, is watching your masterclass. If the music remains at the same intensity for 10 minutes, her brain will eventually habituate to the sound and filter it out as noise. To prevent this, professional scriptwriters use the sonic bridge. Every time you transition to a new major point, you should change the musical key or the instrumentation. This acts as a mental reset button. It signals to Sarah's brain that the previous chapter is closed and a new, important piece of information is arriving. In the US, where the competition for attention is absolute, these tiny auditory cues are the difference between a viewer finishing part 1 and a viewer binge-watching all 10 parts. Another deep-dive element of audio strategy is the silence trap. Most creators are afraid of silence, so they fill every millisecond with music or fast-paced talking. However, in the 2026 US market, silence is one of the most powerful tools for emphasis. A well-placed 2-second pause after a shocking statistic or a controversial statement forces the viewer to process what they just heard. It creates a vacuum that the viewer feels compelled to fill with their own thoughts, often leading them to the comment section to share their opinion. Data from engagement-heavy channels shows that videos with intentional pauses have a higher comment-to-view ratio than those with non-stop narration. This is the art of giving your content room to breathe. Let us look at the step-by-step implementation of Foley effects. In 2026, the American viewer expects a certain level of hyperreality. If you are talking about money and a coin flip graphic appears, but there is no sound of a coin clinking, the experience feels hollow. You need to layer in sound effects that are slightly louder and crisper than they would be in real life. This is known as the Hollywood sound. By adding these micro sounds, you are providing the viewer with constant dopamine micro hits. Each sound is a small reward for paying attention. When these rewards are delivered consistently, the viewer's brain enters a flow state, and 20 minutes can feel like 5. But even with perfect audio and visuals, there is a missing component that dictates whether a video truly goes viral or just performs well. This is the concept of cultural relevancy and the specific timing of the US trend cycle. While audio and visual mechanics provide the vehicle, the cultural hook is the fuel. In 2026, the speed of information is so high that if you are off by even 48 hours, your content can feel like a relic of the past. In the next part, we are going to dive into the trend life cycle, and the specific day of the week strategies that maximize the potential outcomes for US-based channels. We will examine how to identify the tipping point of a meme before it hits the mainstream and the secret of the newsjacking technique that can catapult a small channel into the national conversation overnight. If you have ever wondered why some mediocre videos get millions of views while your high-effort content struggles, the answer lies in the temporal synchronization we are about to explore. Temporal synchronization is the heartbeat of the American digital ecosystem in 2026. If you are releasing content without a clear understanding of the news cycle velocity, you are essentially shouting into a hurricane. In the United States, the window for a trend to transition from an underground movement to a saturated cliché has shrunk from weeks to approximately 72 hours. To master this, we utilize a strategy known as newsjacking. This is the art of injecting your brand or message into a breaking news story to generate massive media coverage and social engagement. Historical trends show that the first 3 creators to provide a high-quality, unique perspective on a breaking U.S. event capture nearly 65% of the total available search and recommendation traffic for that topic. Imagine a creator named Chloe, based in Seattle, who runs a channel focused on sustainable urban living. In early 2026, a major U.S. city announces a radical new piece of legislation regarding public transportation and autonomous vehicle lanes. While mainstream news outlets are reporting the dry facts, Chloe has already scripted, filmed, and uploaded a deep dive explaining how this specific law will change the daily commute for the average American family. Because she acted within the first 6 hours of the news breaking, the YouTube algorithm identified her video as a high-relevance authority. By the time the larger channels caught up 48 hours later, Chloe had already secured 2 million views and 40,000 new subscribers. This was not luck. It was the result of a pre-built newsjacking infrastructure. To implement this yourself, you must move beyond reactive posting and into predictive analytics. In 2026, we monitor leading indicators like the Reddit rising feeds, specialized Discord servers for industry insiders, and the high-velocity search queries on Google Trends. When you see a spike in a specific keyword related to your niche, you do not wait for a script to be perfect. You utilize a minimum viable video strategy. You produce the core value immediately, leveraging the raw, authentic style that U.S. audiences currently prefer during breaking events. Data from case studies suggests that viewers in 2026 value speed and accuracy over high production gloss when it comes to timely information. If you can be the first to explain a complex American cultural shift, the audience will forgive a slightly less polished edit. We must also analyze the day-of-the-week strategy for the U.S. market. The American work week creates a specific psychological rhythm that dictates content consumption. Monday through Wednesday are high-intent days. Viewers are looking for productivity, education, and career-related content. If you are releasing a deep dive masterclass, Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time is a historically strong window, as it catches the East Coast during a mid-morning break and the West Coast just as they are starting their day. Thursday begins the shift toward escapism. By Friday afternoon and Saturday, the American audience is largely seeking entertainment, humor, and lifestyle content. If you post a heavy, data-driven financial analysis on a Saturday evening in the US, your potential outcomes for reach are significantly lower than if you had waited until the following Tuesday. Consider the case study of a major US fitness brand in 2026. They discovered that by shifting their transformation stories to Sunday evenings, they tapped into the Monday reset psychology of the American public. People on Sunday nights are often reflecting on their goals for the coming week. By providing inspirational and actionable content at that exact moment of psychological readiness, the brand saw a 30% increase in save rates and shareability compared to their midweek posts. This is about aligning your content with the biological and social clocks of your audience. Furthermore, we must address the concept of the micro-season. In the US, virality is often tied to hyperlocal or hypertemporal events that last only a day or two. Think of National Coffee Day, the Super Bowl, or even a specific weather event like a major snowstorm on the East Coast. Viral Masters in 2026 have a content calendar that includes these anchor points months in advance. They prepare evergreen frameworks that can be quickly adapted with the latest data. For example, if you are a tech creator, you don't just wait for the next big phone release. You have a template ready for everything we know about that you can populate and publish within 30 minutes of a major leak. This is how you win the search to social pipeline. Another deep dive tactic is the use of cultural bridges. In the US, diverse subcultures often interact in predictable ways. If a trend starts in the gaming community, it will often migrate to the tech community within 4 days, and then to the general lifestyle community within 10 days. By identifying a trend in its seed community, you can prepare content for the mainstream community before the trend even arrives there. This is like being a surfer who spots the wave while it is still a mile out at sea. Case studies from 2026 fashion creators show that those who tracked European runway trends and translated them for the US streetwear audience 3 months ahead of time saw consistent, exponential growth because they became the primary source for what is next. Let us look at the step-by-step detail of the comment-driven pivot. In a high-velocity US market, your audience will tell you what the next viral hit is if you listen. In 2026, we use AI-driven sentiment analysis to scan the thousands of comments on a successful video. We aren't looking for great video. We are looking for the "I wish you talked more about," or "what happens if you do X instead." These are not just comments. They are highly validated content prompts. When you create a follow-up video that explicitly answers a popular comment, you are utilizing the feedback loop to ensure virality. The person who asked the question feels a deep personal connection to the channel, and the thousands of others who had the same thought feel seen. This builds a community that acts as a distribution engine for every video you post. Imagine if you created a video about the 2026 housing market and the top comment was a specific question about tiny homes in rural areas. Instead of just replying, you make the next video in your series, "The Truth About Rural Tiny Homes in 2026. You have already confirmed there is a high demand for this specific angle. Historical trends indicate that community-validated content has a 25% higher retention rate because the audience feels a sense of ownership over the topic. But even with perfect timing and community validation, there is a technical wall that many creators hit. This is the algorithmic threshold. Every platform has a set of hidden quality scores that determine how far your video is pushed beyond your initial subscribers. In the US, these scores are heavily weighted toward external shares and session start metrics. It is not enough for someone to watch your video. The platform wants your video to bring people onto the app or keep them there for hours. In the next part, we are going to deconstruct the sharing psychology of the American viewer. We will look at the vulnerability to value ratio and why being perfect is actually a disadvantage in the 2026 algorithm. We will explore the specific trigger words that cause a viewer to click the share button instinctively. If your content is being watched but not shared, you are essentially stuck in a closed loop. We are about to break that loop and show you how to turn every viewer into a volunteer promoter for your brand. To break the closed loop of passive consumption, we must first understand the social psychology of the share button in the United States. In 2026, sharing a video is a form of digital identity curation. When a user like Michael in Denver sends a link to a friend or posts a video to his story, he is not just sharing information. He is making a statement about who he is. He is saying, "I am the kind of person who knows this, I am the kind of person who finds this funny, or I am the kind of person who cares about this issue." Historical trends show that content that provides social currency is shared at a rate 4 times higher than content that is merely informative. This is the difference between a video that says, "Here are 5 facts about the economy," and one that says, "Here is the one secret the housing market is hiding from your generation." The second title offers a piece of insider knowledge that the viewer can then use to look informed in their own social circles. Case studies from top-performing US channels in 2026 highlight a phenomenon called the vulnerability to value ratio. For years, the prevailing wisdom was that creators needed to be perfect, polished, and invincible. However, current data indicates that the American audience has developed a deep cynicism toward perfection. We see a significant spike in shareability when a creator admits to a mistake or shares a failed experiment. Imagine if a high-end tech reviewer admits that they bought into a hyped-up product and it failed them miserably. By being vulnerable, the creator builds a bridge of trust. But the vulnerability alone is not enough. It must lead to a specific value or lesson. This combination creates an emotional resonance that compels the viewer to share the video as a warning or a helpful tip for their peers. Let us examine the step-by-step mechanics of the shareable hook. Every viral video in the US market contains at least one clippable moment or a memeable quote. This is a 5 to 10 second segment that can stand entirely on its own. If a viewer can take a screen recording of your video and post it to their own social media without needing the context of the previous 5 minutes, you have successfully created a distribution asset. In 2026, the most successful creators script these moments intentionally. They use what we call the pithy provocation. a short, punchy sentence that challenges a commonly held belief. For example, instead of saying, "It is important to save money," a creator might say, "Your savings account is actually a slow-motion car crash for your purchasing power." This statement is bold, it is provocative, and it is highly shareable because it sparks an immediate reaction. Another critical factor in sharing psychology is the utility-based share. This is particularly relevant for educational and DIY content. Historical trends show that videos providing a step-by-step solution to a common, frustrating problem have the highest long-term shareability. In the US, where people are increasingly looking for ways to optimize their time and resources, a video that shows a 3-minute fix for a broken household appliance or a shortcut in a popular software tool becomes a digital tool that people save and send to others. Imagine if Alex from Miami finds a video explaining a new obscure tax credit for remote workers. He doesn't just watch it, he sends it to his entire Slack channel at work. This is the utility loop. By providing extreme granular value, you turn your audience into a secondary sales force. Furthermore, we must address the concept of the common enemy. In the United States, nothing unites a community faster than a shared frustration or a common obstacle. Viral videos often identify a villain, which could be an outdated industry standard, a misleading marketing tactic, or a confusing piece of bureaucracy. By positioning yourself as the guide who helps the viewer navigate or defeat this villain, you create a sense of camaraderie. Data from 2026 social sentiment analysis shows that videos that frame their message as "us versus the problem" have a 35% higher engagement rate than those that use a "me teaching you" tone. This shift in perspective makes the viewer feel like they are part of a movement, and people love to share their involvement in a movement. Let us look at the technical implementation of the share trigger. In your script, you should explicitly give the viewer a reason to share. This is not a generic like and subscribe call to action. Instead, it is a tag someone who needs to see this or send this to that one friend who is always doing X. By providing a specific persona for the viewer to send the video to, you reduce the cognitive effort required to think of a recipient. In the US market, specificity is the key to conversion. A case study of a 2026 parenting channel showed that when the creator said, "Send this to a mom who hasn't slept in 3 days," the share rate increased by over 50% compared to when they simply asked for a share. We also need to consider the validation share. Many Americans share content that confirms their existing biases or provides a professional-sounding articulation of an idea they already hold. This is why opinion pieces with strong, data-backed arguments perform so well. If you can provide the evidence and the vocabulary for a viewer to win an argument they are already having in their real life, they will use your video as their primary weapon. This is about providing the social proof that your audience is craving. When you cite reputable sources or show real-world data from the current year 2026, you are giving your viewer the confidence to hit that share button and say, "See, I told you so." But there is a danger in the quest for shareability. If you become too polarizing or too focused on the common enemy, you risk alienating the very platforms that distribute your content. In 2026, the AI moderators that govern US social media are highly sensitive to engagement baiting and toxic polarization. There is a very fine line between being provocative and being flagged. To navigate this, we use the sanitized conflict technique. You address the tension, you provide the contrarian view, but you always maintain an educational and professional tone. This ensures that your video remains brand safe while still being edgy enough to trigger the sharing reflex. As we move forward, we must realize that sharing is just the beginning of the viral journey. Once the video is shared, it enters new circles where people don't know who you are. This is where your authority signals must work even harder. If a stranger receives your video, they are making a split-second judgment on your credibility. In the next part, we are going to dive into the visual and verbal cues of expertise. We will look at the specific trust markers that top US creators use to establish instant rapport with a cold audience. We will explore the authority-to-likability balance and how to use self-deprecating authority to win over skeptical viewers. If you can't establish trust within the first 5 seconds of someone clicking a shared link, all the sharing in the world won't save your retention numbers. We are about to unlock the secret to becoming an instant expert in any niche. Becoming an instant expert in the US market in 2026 is not about listing your credentials or displaying a university degree on the wall behind you. In fact, historical trends indicate that lead-ins featuring long-winded introductions about a creator's background result in a 40% drop-off rate within the first 15 seconds. The American viewer identifies expertise through a specific set of nonverbal trust markers and a linguistic style known as high-density low-fluff communication. To establish yourself as an authority to a cold audience, those who just received your video via share, you must lead with a profound insight that the viewer has never heard before but immediately recognizes as true. This is the intellectual gut punch. It bypasses the logical skepticism of the viewer and lands directly in their subconscious, as a signal that you are someone worth listening to. Imagine a viewer named Robert in Houston who just received a link to your video. He has never heard of you. If you start by saying, "Hi, I am an expert in social media and I have worked with big brands," Robert is already looking for the exit. However, if you start by saying, "Most creators are failing because they are optimizing for the 2024 algorithm while the 2026 AI infrastructure has already shifted towards semantic relevance over keyword density," Robert stops. You have just identified a specific, timely problem and used technical vocabulary that suggests you are operating at a higher level than the average creator. This is the first step-by-step detail of the authority blueprint. Use industry-specific terminology correctly and early. In the US, being able to name the problem with precision is often seen as being halfway to the solution. Case studies of top-tier US financial and tech commentators show that they utilize a technique called the authority-to-likability balance. If you are too authoritative, you come off as arrogant and out of touch. If you are too likable, you come off as an amateur who is just happy to be there. The viral masters in 2026 use self-deprecating authority. This involves making a high-level, expert point and then immediately following it with a relatable, humanizing moment. For example, a creator might explain a complex data set about the 2026 labor market and then add, "And trust me, I only know this because I spent 3 hours crying over an Excel spreadsheet, so you do not have to." This signals to the audience that while you possess superior knowledge, you are still one of them. You are a peer who has gone into the trenches to bring back valuable intelligence. This creates a psychological bond known as the expert-friend dynamic, which is the most potent form of influence in the modern US digital landscape. Let us look at the visual trust markers that signal expertise. In 2026, the American public is increasingly aware of AI-generated content and deepfakes. To counter this, human experts are using micro-imperfections in their videos to prove authenticity. This might mean having a slightly cluttered bookshelf in the background that looks real rather than a perfect 3D rendered office. It also involves the use of eye-level framing. If the camera is too high, you look like you are being looked down upon. If it is too low, you look like a looming dictator. Framing yourself exactly at eye level creates a sense of democratic equality that the US audience subconsciously rewards with higher trust scores. Furthermore, the use of active hand gestures, specifically those that are visible within the frame, has been shown in historical trends to increase the perceived honesty of a speaker. When people can see your hands, they feel less like they are being manipulated. Data from 2026 communication studies suggest that the rate of speech also dictates perceived authority. In the US, speaking slightly faster than average, roughly 150 to 160 words per minute, is associated with intelligence and energy. However, the key to maintaining authority is the power pause. While you speak quickly during the explanation, you must come to a complete, dead stop after a major point. This contrast creates a gravity around your words. It tells the viewer, "This next part is so important that I am willing to stop the momentum of the video for it." If you never stop talking, you sound like a salesperson. If you pause effectively, you sound like a professor. Now, consider the use of evidence-based storytelling. In 2026, claims without data are treated as noise. To be an instant expert, you must provide what we call the proof layer. Every time you make a claim, you should have a visual overlay that cites a study, shows a chart, or displays a screenshot of a primary source. Imagine if you are discussing the shift in US consumer behavior. Instead of just saying people are buying more local goods, you show a 2026 report from a major retail association with a key stat highlighted in yellow. This shifts the burden of proof from your personality to the data. It makes your argument unassailable. The viewer may not know you, but they know the data, and by extension, they trust the person presenting it. Another deep dive tactic is the use of the contrarian framework. Most people who try to be experts simply repeat what everyone else is saying. Real experts in the US market are those who find the flaw in the consensus. This is not about being a contrarian for the sake of it. It is about providing a more nuanced perspective. If everyone is saying that a certain social media platform is dying, the expert is the one who says it is not dying, the demographic is simply migrating from the feed to the direct messages, and here is how to track that. This type of insight is highly valuable because it provides a competitive advantage to the viewer. In a capitalist society like the United States, Providing a competitive advantage is the fastest way to build a massive, loyal following. Let us look at the step-by-step implementation of the logic chain. To be perceived as an expert, your video must follow a rigorous logical progression. If your points are disjointed, the viewer's brain has to work too hard to follow you, and they will subconsciously label you as disorganized. We use the problem agitation solution evidence, perpose model. You state the problem, you agitate it by explaining the consequences of ignoring it, you provide the solution, and then you provide the evidence that the solution works. When you repeat this cycle 3 or 4 times in a single 10-minute video, you are effectively conditioning the viewer to accept your authority. By the 3rd cycle, their brain has recognized the pattern of you solving their problems, which triggers a dopamine release that keeps them watching. Imagine if Sarah from our earlier examples is watching this. She is skeptical at first, but by the 7th minute, you have correctly identified 3 of her professional frustrations and provided data-backed solutions for all of them. At this point, you are no longer just a person on a screen, you are a resource. You have earned her subscription not by asking for it, but by demonstrating a consistent return on her time investment. This is the only way to achieve sustainable virality in 2026. However, even the most trusted expert can be forgotten if they do not know how to handle the end of a video. Most creators make the mistake of winding down, giving a long outro, and essentially telling the viewer it is okay to leave. This is a catastrophic error in retention. In the next part, we are going to deconstruct the anti-outro and the psychology of the next step loop. We will explore how to end a video in a way that actually increases your total channel watch time, and why the last 30 seconds are actually more important than the first 30 for long-term algorithmic growth. We are about to look at the exact transition techniques that turn a one-time viewer into a binge watcher who consumes your entire library in a single sitting. If you are struggling with low views on your older content, the next section will show you how to breathe new life into every video you have ever made. Breathing new life into your entire video library is not about luck. It is about the strategic engineering of the end screen and the psychological mastery of the session start metric. In 2026, the YouTube algorithm in the United States does not just look at how long someone watched your current video. It looks at what they did next. If a viewer finishes your video and then closes the app or goes to a competitor's channel, the algorithm assigns a negative weight to that session. However, if that viewer clicks on another one of your videos, you have triggered a session extension. This is the holy grail of viral growth. Historical trends show that channels that master the transition between videos see a 300% higher likelihood of being pushed to a wider seed audience because they are effectively keeping users on the platform longer. The biggest mistake you are likely making right now is the verbal telegraph of the end. In the US market, as soon as a viewer hears words like "in conclusion," "to wrap things up," or "thanks for watching," their brain immediately checks out. This is the drop-off cliff. We see retention graphs in 2026 that stay at 70% until the narrator says so in summary, at which point the graph falls to 10% in less than 3 seconds. To combat this, we use the anti-outro. You do not summarize. You do not say goodbye. You maintain the same high energy and high value density until the very last frame. In fact, you should be delivering one of your strongest points or a surprising piece of data right as the end screen elements appear. Imagine a creator named Jordan from Atlanta who runs a deep dive series on urban engineering. In a case study from mid-2026, Jordan stopped using a formal outro. Instead, while he was finishing his final point about bridge tension, he pointed to a specific spot on the screen where his next video on skyscraper foundations was about to appear. He said, "But understanding tension is useless if you do not understand how we anchor these structures into shifting soil, which is exactly what I break down here." He did not ask them to click. He created a new information gap that could only be satisfied by the next video. The potential outcomes were staggering. His click-through rate on end screens jumped from 2% to 18% overnight. This is the bridge building technique. You are not ending a video, you are opening a door. Let us look at the step-by-step detail of the narrative bridge. To do this effectively, you must plan your next video before you finish filming your current one. This is called sequential content mapping. In the US, viewers love a bingeable experience. If you are teaching a 10-part masterclass like this one, each part must end with a cliffhanger that addresses a specific pain point mentioned earlier. For example, if you just spent 10 minutes explaining the psychology of trust, you end by saying, "Now that you have their trust, you have a new problem. How do you convert that trust into a community that actually fights for your brand?" That is the focus of the next chapter. By framing the next video as the solution to a problem you just created, you make the click feel mandatory rather than optional. Data from 2026 engagement metrics suggests that the placement of your in-screen elements is also a high-stakes decision. In the United States, most mobile users are right-handed. Placing your most important call-to-action video on the right side of the screen, where the thumb naturally rests, can lead to a measurable increase in clicks. Furthermore, the visual of the end screen should not be a static image. It should be a blurred or darkened version of the video still playing in the background. This maintains the visual continuity and prevents the brain from signaling that the show is over. You want the transition to be so seamless that the viewer barely realizes they have moved from one video to the next. Consider the concept of the retroactive view loop. This is how you use your new viral hits to save your old underperforming content. In 2026, we use a technique called card mapping. At the moment in your new video where you mention a concept you have covered previously, you drop a card in the top right corner. But here is the secret. You must give the viewer a reason to stay on the current video while acknowledging the card. You might say, I did a deep dive on this specific data point 6 months ago, which you can check out later, but for now we need to focus on how this applies to today's market. This plants a seed. The viewer now knows there is more value waiting for them, but they feel compelled to finish the current narrative first. Historical trends in the US also show the power of the comment section pin for session extension. Your pinned comment should not just be a thank you. It should be a curated link to a playlist or a specific follow-up video that expands on the most controversial point of the current video. In 2026, we see that approximately 15% of viewers check the comments while the video is still playing. If they see a link to more relevant content right there, they are likely to click it and add it to their queue. This is about occupying as much of the digital real estate as possible. Let us expand on the psychology of the binge. In the United States, platforms like Netflix have conditioned the public to expect a story that never truly ends. You can replicate this by using internal referencing. Throughout your script, you should mention other videos as if they are chapters in a larger book. Instead of saying, like I said before, you say, as we established in the deep dive on audio science. This gives your channel a sense of scale and authority. It suggests that you have a vast library of knowledge, which encourages the viewer to explore. Imagine if a viewer like Sarah finishes this part and realizes there are 7 previous parts she hasn't seen yet. If you have referenced them correctly, she won't go to her home feed. She will go to your channel page. The final element of the session start strategy is the use of playlists as narratives. In 2026, the US audience prefers curated experiences over random discovery. By grouping your videos into high-value playlists with titles that promise a transformation, such as the Complete Viral Blueprint 2026, you are reducing the decision fatigue for the viewer. They don't have to choose what to watch next. You have already chosen for them. Case studies of educational channels show that viewers who enter a channel through a playlist have a 40% higher lifetime value than those who enter through a single search result. But there is one final hurdle. You can have the best transitions, the best session start metrics, and the most bingeable library, but if you do not understand the raw power of the thumbnail title synergy in the first 3 seconds of a new discovery, your bridge will lead to an empty room. In the next part, we are going to dive into the visual cognitive science of the 2026 thumbnail. We will look at the exact color contrast ratios that stop the scroll in a crowded feed, and the specific facial expression clusters that have been proven to trigger a click in the US market. We will explore the rule of 3 for thumbnail text, and why everything you thought you knew about clickbait is actually hurting your long-term growth. We are about to deconstruct the most important 300 pixels on the internet. The most important 300 pixels on the internet are currently the battleground for the survival of your brand in the 2026 US market. In an era where artificial intelligence can generate 1 million high-resolution images in seconds, the American viewer has developed a sophisticated filter for what we call artificial friction. This is the instinctive rejection of thumbnails that look like generic stock photos or overly manipulated clickbait. Historical trends indicate that the era of the shocked face with a giant red arrow is declining in effectiveness for high-authority niches. Instead, we are seeing the rise of the minimalist power thumbnail. This strategy relies on the rule of 3. 1 clear subject, 1 high-contrast background, and no more than 3 words of text. If a viewer has to squint or spend more than 1.5 seconds decoding your thumbnail, they have already scrolled past you. Imagine a creator named Marcus in New York, who is competing in the saturated space of business analysis. In early 2026, Marcus conducted an A/B test on his latest upload. Thumbnail A featured a collage of 4 different charts, a photo of him pointing at a laptop, and the text How to Scale Your Business Fast in 2026. Thumbnail B featured a single, high-resolution shot of a wilting office plant against a stark black background with the text "The Growth Trap." Thumbnail B saw a 45% higher click-through rate. Why? Because it leveraged the curiosity gap through visual metaphor. In the US, where everyone is shouting for attention, the person who whispers something intriguing is the one who gets heard. This is the step-by-step detail of visual cognitive science. You are not trying to summarize the video. You are trying to represent the emotional core of the problem. Let us look at the specific color contrast ratios that dominate the 2026 feed. Data suggests that the human eye is biologically programmed to notice specific color pairings. We use the 60-30-10 rule for thumbnail design. 60% of the frame should be a dominant, neutral color like deep charcoal or navy. 30% should be a secondary, high saturation color like safety orange or electric blue to create depth. The final 10% should be your accent color, used only for the most critical piece of text or the highlight on your subject's face. In the US, where dark mode is the standard for most mobile users, thumbnails with a bright, clean border or a subtle outer glow on the subject tend to pop more against the dark interface. Case studies from 2026 show that adding a 2-pixel stroke of a warm color around the subject can increase the perceived sharpness of the image, which the brain equates with higher production value and reliability. We must also deconstruct the specific facial expression clusters that trigger a click. In 2026, the American audience is weary of exaggerated emotions. The trend has shifted toward what we call intense focus, or the knowledgeable smirk. Instead of wide-eyed shock, top creators are using a facial expression that suggests they have just discovered something the viewer hasn't. This creates a psychological drive called information asymmetry. The viewer feels that you know something they don't, and the only way to level the playing field is to click. If you are showing your face, your eyes must be in sharp focus. The biological imperative of eye contact is so strong that even on a tiny screen, a viewer is more likely to click on a thumbnail where the creator is looking directly into the lens with a neutral but intense expression. Furthermore, we must address the thumbnail title synergy. This is where most creators fail in the US market. They repeat the title in the thumbnail text. This is a waste of valuable real estate. In 2026, the thumbnail and title should act like a setup and a punchline. If your title is the truth about social media growth, your thumbnail text should not be social media growth. It should be "It is over" or "They lied." The thumbnail provides the emotional hook, while the title provides the logical context. Historical trends show that when the thumbnail text complements rather than duplicates the title, the combined click-through rate increases by nearly 20%. This is because you are giving the brain two different points of entry into the story. One appeals to the lizard brain's need for survival and curiosity, and the other appeals to the neocortex's need for information. Consider the case study of a 2026 automotive channel that used the concept of visual proof. Instead of using text on the thumbnail, they used a high-contrast photo of a rusted car part next to a brand new one, with a single question mark between them. The title was "Why Your Mechanic is Silent." This created a high-stakes narrative without saying a single word about money or repair costs. It tapped into the American consumer's fear of being taken advantage of. Potential outcomes for this type of psychological framing are almost always higher than traditional instructional titles. You are selling a solution to a fear, and fear is a more powerful click driver than curiosity alone. Now, let us look at the step-by-step implementation of the typography of authority. In 2026, the choice of font in your thumbnail communicates your niche before the viewer reads a single letter. Sans serif, bold, and slightly condensed fonts like Impact or Bebas Neue are synonymous with urgent, fast-paced content. However, thinner, more spaced-out fonts like Futura or Lotto signal a more premium, philosophical, or high-end educational experience. In the US, where brand perception is everything, using the wrong font can confuse your target demographic. If you are teaching a masterclass but use a font that looks like a gaming meme, you will attract the wrong audience, your retention will plummet, and the algorithm will stop serving your video. You must match your visual branding to the intellectual level of your script. We also need to discuss the saturation of the US feed. On any given afternoon in 2026, an American user is bombarded with thousands of thumbnails. To stand out, you must utilize the pattern break of negative space. Most thumbnails are crowded. By leaving 40% of your thumbnail completely empty, you create a visual resting point. This is the same principle used in luxury advertising. The more empty space there is, the more important the central subject feels. This is a subtle way to signal to the US viewer that your content is high quality, and doesn't need to scream for attention. It exudes a quiet confidence that is often missing from the chaotic feeds of amateur creators. But even with the perfect thumbnail and a sky-high click-through rate, your viral journey is not over. In fact, the most dangerous part is yet to come. If you get someone to click, but you don't know how to convert that initial spark into a long-term community that will sustain your channel through the inevitable algorithmic shifts, you will be a one-hit wonder. In the final part of this masterclass, we are going to dive into the community architecture of 2026. We will look at how to move from a creator to a leader, the specific comment response strategies that build deep-seated loyalty, and how to utilize the community tab to keep your channel alive, even when you aren't posting videos. We are about to look at the math of the 1,000 true fans in a world of a billion viewers. If you have mastered the hook, the edit, and the thumbnail, the only thing left is the legacy. In the next part, we finish the blueprint. The legacy of a viral creator in the United States in 2026 is built on the foundation of community architecture. If you treat your viewers like a statistic, they will treat your content like a disposable commodity. In the high-velocity attention economy, the transition from being a content creator to a community leader is the only pathway to long-term sustainability. Historical trends suggest that channels with a highly engaged core audience of just 1,000 true fans can outperform channels with 1 million passive subscribers. This is because the American audience in 2026 values belonging over entertainment. They are looking for a digital third space, a place where their presence is acknowledged and their input is valued. If you can build this, you are no longer at the mercy of the algorithm, you are supported by a movement. Imagine a creator named Taylor in Chicago who runs a channel on the future of work and 2026 labor trends. Taylor realized early on that her comments section was more valuable than her view count. She implemented a strategy called the first-hour engagement burst. Every time she uploads, she spends the first 60 minutes personally responding to every meaningful comment. But she does not just say thank you. She uses a step-by-step detail of deepening the dialogue. If a viewer makes a point about remote work burnout, Taylor asks them a follow-up question about their specific industry. This turns a one-way broadcast into a two-way conversation. Case studies of this behavior show that users who receive a heart or a reply from a creator are 80% more likely to return for the next 3 consecutive uploads. You are effectively training your audience to engage by providing a direct social reward. To execute this at scale, we must look at the community tab as a primary content channel, not an afterthought. In 2026, the U.S. audience consumes mobile content in microbursts throughout the workday. A well-timed poll or a behind-the-scenes photo in the community tab keeps your brand top of mind, even on days when you are not releasing a full-length video. Data from top U.S. channels indicates that polls have the highest engagement to impression ratio of any post type. By asking your audience for their opinion on your next video topic, you are utilizing the IKEA effect. This is a psychological phenomenon where people value something more if they helped build it. When your video finally drops, the thousands of people who voted for that topic feel a personal responsibility to watch and share it because it was partially their idea. Consider the case study of a major U.S. gaming and tech community. They shifted their strategy to include a weekly pulse check poll where they asked followers to rank the most important news stories of the week. This allowed the community to feel like they were the editorial board for the channel. The potential outcomes were a 60% increase in returning viewer rate. In the United States, where individualism and personal agency are core cultural values, giving your audience a seat at the table is a masterstroke of retention. You are creating a sense of psychological ownership. Furthermore, we must address the concept of the subculture language. Every thriving community in 2026 has its own lexicon, specific terms, inside jokes, and recurring themes that only true fans understand. This creates a barrier to entry that actually increases the value of being an insider. In your scripting, you should consciously develop these terms. If you consistently refer to your viewers by a specific name or use a unique phrase to describe a common frustration, you are building a tribal identity. Historical trends in the US show that these micro-communities are more resilient to platform shifts because the fans follow the community, not just the content. If the platform changes its UI or its recommendation engine, your tribe will seek you out elsewhere because the social bond is stronger than the delivery mechanism. Let us look at the step-by-step detail of the value-based newsletter integration. In 2026, the smartest creators in the US are diversifying their reach. While the video is the hook, the community lives in the inbox. By offering a high-value, data-driven summary of your video or a PDF guide to the concepts discussed, You can move your most loyal fans from a third-party platform to a direct communication line. Imagine if Sarah from our previous examples joins your email list because you offered a 2026 social media cheat sheet. You now have the ability to reach her directly without worrying about whether the algorithm shows her your next thumbnail. This is the ultimate form of digital insurance. We also need to discuss the ethical responsibility of the viral creator. In the US market, trust is easily gained but even more easily lost. In 2026, the audience has a zero-tolerance policy for misleading information or hidden agendas. If you are conducting a case study or citing data, you must be transparent about your sources. Authentic leadership in the digital space requires a level of vulnerability that we touched on in previous parts, but it also requires consistency. If you change your stance every time a new trend appears, you will be seen as a grifter. Longevity in the American market comes from having a North Star, a core set of principles that your audience knows you will never compromise on. Now, consider the concept of the global-local bridge. While you are targeting the US market, your community is often global. However, to maintain that viral edge in the US, you must anchor your community in American cultural moments. This might mean hosting live Q&A sessions that align with US time zones or referencing specific American holidays and events. Data shows that even international viewers are drawn to the specific energy of the US market, but the core engine of your growth will always be the high-intent, high-spending American consumer. By focusing your community management on this demographic, you maximize the potential for high-value brand partnerships and long-term monetization. Let us expand on the step-by-step detail of the crisis management plan. No creator is immune to a backlash or a decline in views. In 2026, the way you handle a dip in performance defines your future. Viral masters do not panic, they pivot. They go back to the community and ask, what are we missing? They use the data to identify where the disconnect happened. In the US, the comeback story is a powerful narrative. If you can openly discuss why a certain series failed and how you are evolving based on audience feedback, you turn a negative into a massive positive. You show that you are listening, which is the rarest and most valuable trait a creator can have in the modern age. The final pillar of the blueprint is the perpetual learning loop. The world of 2026 is moving so fast that what you have learned in these 10 parts will be the baseline by 2027. To remain viral, you must stay a student of the platform. You must constantly analyze the newest features, the latest shifts in human psychology, and the changing landscape of the attention economy. You are never done. The blueprint is a living document. You have the hooks, the audio science, the visual hierarchy, the temporal synchronization, and the community architecture. You have the tools to occupy the most valuable real estate on the planet, the human mind. But as we conclude this masterclass, there is one final, overarching question you must answer for yourself. Virality is the vehicle, but where is the destination? A video that goes viral without a purpose is a wasted opportunity. In the next phase of your journey, you will need to define the impact you want to have on the culture of the United States. While we have covered the mechanics of the game, the next step is about the philosophy of the player. If you are ready to take these technical skills and apply them to a vision that transcends a simple view count, you are prepared to build something that lasts far beyond the next news cycle. The blueprint is in your hands. Now it is time to build.